had this like pipe dream of working at like, a big tech company, and it seemed so far off when I first started learning. And it was like, it'd be really cool if I could work at some big tech company and like work on these products that like millions of people use. That'd be so cool. But I just like, honestly, if I was being totally honest, just never saw myself getting there.
Hi y'all, and welcome to Muko's Corner. It's a show about leading a life that feels more you in your life and tech career. I'm your host, Mayuko, and invite you as always to come in, sit down, maybe today grab a cup of coffee because you're probably going to want it after listening to this one, and enjoy the show. So today on the show, we have Caleb. Caleb is a lifelong tinker, specialty coffee geek, and loves building cool things. He enjoys spending time with his family, staying current on the latest in tech, and visiting new coffee shops. So, hi Caleb! How are you doing? How's your week been?
Hey, yeah. Thanks again for having me. I'm super excited to be here and just to chat about, fun tech stuff, coffee stuff, etc.
Mm-hmm.
My week's going pretty well. Just, catching up after the long weekend and continuing on all the stuff I'm working on at work and just, living family life and just,
Awesome. Love it. Okay, so for context, Caleb and I think we've followed each other on Instagram for a while now. I don't even remember how I found you originally. Maybe it was for your coffee content.
I think I remember, actually. So I've been following you for a while, and then I talk occasionally on my Instagram about tech stuff that I do outside of coffee.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I tagged you as a list of like a couple other tech accounts that I follow because I was working on some like refactoring or something, so I was like tagging a bunch of people that might care, and so I think you were like, whoa, hey, like cool coffee content. We just kind of started chatting, so I think that's how maybe we met. But yeah, been following you a long time.
Yeah, internet friends.
Yeah. Ooh, internet friends.
I mean, so actually this is the first time that I've really gotten to talk to Caleb in this synchronous environment we were just talking before the show. So yeah, this show, I'm really excited to kind of just like get to know Caleb because we have a lot of things in common. We both have experience working at Intuit. Caleb's actually at Intuit right now. We're both iOS developers, or I was an iOS developer, so we have that kind of like similar career thread, and we both love coffee. Caleb probably maybe likes coffee more than me because he makes a lot of coffee content on Instagram. But like, I love talking to people about coffee because I think it's just so interesting. And I don't come across that many people who are truly interested in all the different aspects there are. Not to judge anybody who's not, but you know what I mean.
Yeah. It's a niche group for sure.
I guess we'll start with kind of like career stuff because, a lot of the people who are watching, listening to this show are kind of in tech already. And so, Caleb, tell me a little bit about what you do at Intuit currently.
Yeah. So, like you said, I am an iOS engineer. I've been doing iOS not at Intuit, but in general for about 6 years. And so, yeah, at Intuit, I work on the QuickBooks checking team. And QuickBooks checking is a particular feature inside of the QuickBooks app. And so I work on, implementing new features and also like the kind of work that goes into maintaining the existing functionality that we have, improving automation, things like that. So yeah, day to day, I'm working on, the future of QuickBooks checking.
That is very familiar to me because I used to work on QuickBooks Mobile before, QuickBooks Mobile, I feel like has had an interesting history of like, it used to be 2 different apps and then it was one app. And then I was actually only there for 6 months because I was there for my rotational program. So I did a year at TurboTax on the TurboTax Universal team, and then I went to QuickBooks. And so we actually probably might have mutual connections, mutual friends, coworkers kind of thing.
Yeah.
I actually don't know if I know anybody at Intuit anymore just because I left in like 2015 or something like that. And you joined in the last 2 years, right?
Yeah, I joined in November 2020. Yeah, so a little over a year, I think. Did I math right?
Awesome.
Yeah, a little over a year. So yeah. I maybe
cool.
will know some people, but maybe not. Yeah.
So how do you like working at Intuit so far? How's it been?
Yeah, I honestly love it. I cannot speak more highly of just my team in general, but just the overall culture of the company. I have been really impressed from the very beginning about how much they genuinely care about their employees. I get a sense that it's very honest and very genuine, that the company wants their employees to be well taken care of, to take care of themselves well, which is like something that companies don't always do both. And some companies say a lot, but then like you don't see the follow through from like upper management or like the people who are like overseeing the people getting their hands dirty. And I see like really great like demonstrational leadership from like upper management and even like my manager in taking time off and like having things to do outside of work and ensuring that people are able to like live and not just work. So that's something that I really love about just the culture of working there. And I really believe in what they're doing to help empower prosperity around the world and empowering small businesses to do what they do. And that's something that I love on like a personal note, just like being able to contribute to people's livelihoods around the world. So that's a few of the things that I like, but overall, like really great experience so far.
That's awesome. I feel like I totally get what you mean. Like I started my career into it. And so like I was kind of like, I don't really know anything else. But since then, working at other companies and stuff and reflecting on my time there, I also got the sense that like people are really well taken care of at Intuit. Cause like, I feel like it's hard to find companies in tech where like people have worked there for 10, 15 years. Like when I was working there were people who were like, I've been working here for maybe longer than you've been alive kind of thing. And I'm just like, dang, like that's a long time. I mean, I was like 20 at the time. So, but like that to me was just like, oh, people are really well taken care of here.
No, totally. I have coworkers that I work with who've been there for 15 plus years. And like one of the people who interviewed me, like one of the things that actually clued me in that it might be a good place to work for is one of the interviewers had been there 20 years. And like, I had never even heard of that in the world of tech. Like people do this, like people have been in the same company or like in the same field for that long. And it was like, like there must be something that's keeping them here. And I think honestly, just the care that Intuit takes with their employees is a big factor.
Totally. And I think it was, I mean, like we probably were surrounded by similar people in that we were both on like an iOS team. But I remember when I was there, it was, a lot of people had been there for 20 years, but they obviously hadn't been doing iOS development for 20 years because iOS development wasn't that old. But like a lot of them were like Mac developers who were doing Mac development on the TurboTax Mac app, and then they were able to transition to doing iOS. And so I think about the people that I work with there, and it's like it's given me a lot of perspective, I guess, because it's just like, oh, like you can have, I don't know, like the thing you said about like, oh, you can have like a 20-year career is like, you just don't really hear about that often. Like a lot of tech employees I feel like the ones that I've tended to work with were like under the age of 45 kind of thing. And so like you just don't hear about it. Like I often wonder, I'm like, what would it be like to be in tech when I'm 50, 60? Like, what is that like, And people like Intuit has those people, which is really fascinating.
That's true. Yeah. Yeah. It's really cool. I get to work with a lot of different people from a lot of different walks of life with like very different careers as far as like the things that they've been able to do and the way that they got into it and into it. I can't not make that joke once a day by mistake.
That happens all the time. Like I feel like you just say it and then people are like, and I'm like, oh my gosh, stop.
not again. Yeah. Anyway, but like it's really cool to get to work with people who have been there so long and like have a really deep understanding of kind of the product and the company as a whole. And I think it's a good testament to the way they do things.
Totally. Yeah. And so I guess like I'm curious also about your iOS development experience. Like how did you get into iOS and like how's that been for you?
Yeah, that's a good question. It's kind of a weird non-traditional approach that I took. I went to a 4-year university in Oregon and I graduated with a degree in elementary education. So like not at all a CS degree, not a tech degree. I was going to go into teaching and I did. For 3 years. I taught in the public school systems in Oregon. And then my wife and I moved to Indonesia and we got to teach at an international school in Indonesia, which was just an amazing experience. Absolutely loved that. But while I was teaching, I kind of realized that there was this side of me that I was really invested in technology and really, on a personal level, but didn't really get to use that a lot in the way that I taught. I integrated that in my teaching to like help train kids to like use technology in actually beneficial ways and not just like, here's an iPad, like go watch some YouTube videos and learn some stuff, which, of course is like an amazing way to learn things. But as a teacher, I struggled to find ways to really use technology in the way that I wanted to. And at the end of the day, it kind of boiled down to me realizing that I wanted to create with technology and not just like use it as a tool. So I wanted to actually be creating the technology. So I started kind of looking into like, what would it take to get there, and found some online courses on Udemy, and started kind of just taking courses and reading books. I don't know if you're familiar with the Big Nerd Ranch book series.
Oh yeah, that's a famous one.
Yeah.
I learned with that one too.
Yeah. So went through some Udemy courses and got the Swift programming book from the Big Nerd Ranch people, and just kind of started diving in and getting my hands dirty. Yeah. So at that point, I got a job at a learn to code company. So I was using kind of my like teaching skills and taking the topics I was learning and then translating that into basically teaching those skills again in course format. And I worked with them for a number of years. And then after that career, or after that job, I ended up getting a job at a creative agency doing iOS development. So it was kind of like this stepping stone from like teaching to teaching iOS development to then doing iOS development, but like in an agency format, which is different than when you're working at like a corporation like Intuit or Netflix or like a big company. It's just different. Like it's the same work, but there's, I don't know, like maybe less ownership, because it's like a client will bring you a project and you do the project and then you ship it off and you may never see it again, or like they may not, have the funds to like keep you on to keep like working on it and introducing updates. So it feels kind of weird. Like you build this project, you put your like blood, sweat, and tears into it, and then you kind of ship it off and it's gone. Whereas like where I'm at now, which is Intuit, which is the job after the agency job, I feel like a really deep sense of ownership, because it's like this continuous product that's going to be around, for a very long time. And it's something that I build into every day. People use it every day. So there's a lot of ownership there. But anyway, long story short, that's basically my journey from learning to code all the way to like teaching coding to coding to now I'm like doing what I wanted to be doing from the very beginning, which is building and creating the technology that I was interested in. So.
That's awesome. That's so like gradual. I think that's what's really interesting about your journey. I think like whenever anybody comes into tech from a non-traditional background, like they didn't study computer science, a lot of it is just like that individual has to kind of like take it upon themselves to teach themselves and then find that first job and opportunity and stuff. But like I find that like especially for people who, did something completely different from iOS development before, there is that kind of like stepping stone element of just like I'm doing kind of an in-between thing and then I do the full thing, which is really cool, because at the end of the day it's like you get to bring so many different parts of yourself to one job, and then you're kind of, I like to think of it as like product development, where you're like iterating on yourself and your career towards where you want to go. Because it's also like I don't know, I don't know about you, but I didn't really know where I wanted to go at the beginning, but then it's like you realize while you're doing it more and more what you like and what you don't like, right?
Yeah, totally. No, I think that's a really a good way of putting it, iterating on yourself. And like, not only just like your skills, but even like your mindset on like what you want to be doing. And I remember like when I first, started considering like, I want to be an iOS engineer. I had this like pipe dream of working at like, a big tech company. And it seemed so far off when I first started learning. And it was like, it'd be really cool if I could work at some big tech company and like work on these products that like millions of people use. That'd be so cool. But I just like, honestly, if I was being totally honest, just never saw myself getting there. But then as time has progressed and like, as I've learned and grown, I now find myself like exactly where I kind of had dreamed of being at a big tech company, where like I am getting to build these cool products. And it's just like amazing to kind of see, even if it's like a slower, longer journey than you imagine, like I don't know how to say this in a non-cheesy way, but like, it's really possible to get there. Like, I went from a non-tech background and now I'm working at a big tech company doing what I like really love doing. So I don't know if that's inspiration or just like super cheesy, but there's my campy inspirational quote of the day.
That's I mean, we'll take the inspiration, right? I think a lot of people watching and listening are probably exactly where you were, 5-6 years ago when you were just starting out. So there's your inspiration of the day, folks, from Caleb.
We need like a little like star like animation to pop up over the video.
Yeah. That's amazing. Okay. So I kind of want to switch gears a little bit into kind of the coffee world, because this is something that I've gotten really into, I think, like ever since, I don't know, maybe like a few years ago or something. And I that really, truly, your Instagram is so beautiful. Like I genuinely get so much like joy out of looking at the stuff that you create there. Like, you know, it's another product that you're creating. Sure, you're making iOS apps for small businesses by day, and then you're creating this beautiful coffee content by night. So can you tell us a little bit about kind of like your coffee presence, hobby, influencing, I don't know what you call it, business, whatever it might be?
Yeah, it's a lot of things. Thank you. First of all, that's really kind of you to say that. And it's something that I, discovered I kind of had a knack for, or a passion for. And, in a previous job, actually, I was sort of tasked with taking over the social media account. And like really dove into kind of like, how does that work? And how does a business find success on Instagram, to kind of use Instagram as a lead generation tool for our company? And I dove into that and got, okay at it. Like I realized like I'm, kind of decent at growing this profile. So when that job ended, I realized like I really like this content creation piece, but I don't really have like an avenue for it anymore. Mm-hmm. And so I was starting to think like, maybe I could just kind of do it for myself. Like I could make myself into like a brand. And like, you understand that with what you do on YouTube and elsewhere. And so basically I just decided like, let's pick something that I love to do and let's just start taking photos of it and talking about it. And it honestly was content creation is difficult. It requires intentionality and forethought. But I think like at its most foundational, like primitive level, it requires just doing the thing. And like, it's so easy to get caught up on like, how do I brand this right? And how do I don't have a nice camera, or I don't know what to talk about. And honestly, it was like, this is a bag of coffee I bought. I think it tastes like this, and I brewed it this way. And it like started out so simple. And that's really what I like try to do today, even, is just kind of to capture what I'm doing. On Instagram, I basically post content about the specialty coffee scene, roasters and different brewing methods and just tips and tricks and techniques. I also do kind of reviews of coffee gear, and I'm often like sent samples of new and upcoming products to kind of showcase and tell people about, so they know where to pick them up to support businesses that are, making the coffee world special. And that's basically what I do. So aside from that, my goal at the end of the day is that people connect with me even more than they connect with my content. Mm-hmm. And something that I've kind of learned to believe along the way, and like this really ties into my journey in learning to code as well, is that like I've come to believe in myself as a scarce resource. And what I mean by that is like I am the only one who can create content the way that I do, and like I am the unique part of it. Like anybody can take pictures of a cup of coffee, but like the way that I do it and the way that I communicate about it is unique to me, and like no one else can really do that. And that was really like an empowering mindset for me, to be able to like just fearlessly post what I'm going to post and not worry about, what people are going to think about it, or let that hold me back from creating. Just realizing like, this is kind of a unique thing that I can bring to the table, even though there are other people doing similar things and making similar content. It's something that I really love to do, and I've kind of learned to think about that way. So I kind of went on a little rabbit trail there, but that's in essence what I do with coffee stuff, and it's a lot of fun.
I love like all of that. Like all of that resonates with me so strongly. Like you make like using yourself as a scarce resource and just like trying things out and like creating content to get people to relate to you as a person. Like I really think that is what's powerful about content creation, but really just like it's not just content creation, it's just creation in general. iOS apps, web apps, coffee content, Instagram posts, TikToks, what have you, right? Because it's I mean, at the end of the day, I like to think of it as like a method of self-expression. And even if the same two people make the same thing, it's gonna feel different. And I also think like it's okay if two people make the same thing, because like I think rising tides raise all boats, like it's awesome when there's more and more people who are talking about the same thing using their own perspective. I mean, like I think it helps that like I relate to you on like some of the kind of tech stuff too, but after looking at your stuff, I want an espresso machine, I want an origami dripper. I literally actually went and bought, there was like some Yemeni beans that you recommended from Canada that I bought. I think it was Muko bun. Yeah. You were like, okay, so like, okay, we're going to dive deep now, y'all. Okay. When we think about coffee content, I think of James Hoffman because he's like the Casey Neistat, of like the coffee world, right? And so I think I watched a video about how Yemeni beans, like coffee beans grown in Yemen, which is like this whole new thing. You know, it's about growing coffee in a more sustainable way because a lot of these coffee beans that are grown in like South America and Africa are experiencing climate change like everywhere else, and so it's really hard to get the crops versus these beans in Yemen are hardy. Like they're so hardy, and so they're very different. And so I watched this video by James Hoffman explaining this to me, and then at the time I think it was like I looked up like beans, and then I was like, these beans are expensive, it's like $100 for a bag kind of thing. But I was so curious, and then you recommended this bag, and I was just like, wait, okay, like someone closer to me is recommending this specific bag, so I bought it, and it was unreal. It's like it's so florally, I feel like Yemeni
like
beans
tea like kind of.
That's exactly what it's like whenever I drink beans from Yemen, I think it reminds me of chamomile tea, which it's you know, I'm just like, it's coffee, but it's tea, but it's coffee, but it's tea.
Yeah.
Anyways, rabbit hole.
No, totally. I'm all for it. Yeah. So in that James Hoffman video, he was talking about that farm in Yemen and just how amazing it is that they even can produce coffee because of like the climate and the terrain, and just it's very difficult, and there's not much farmable land in the whole country. So the fact that like these farms exist is kind of like miraculous, and they're able to cultivate these really delicious coffee crops. And like, I think the fact that it's so hard to grow kind of plays into why it's so expensive and why it's kind of like a hyper specialty coffee, because like it's incredibly difficult to grow. But it's cool that farmers are able to sell their coffees and like sustain their families with this relatively new crop that's being exported now and sold to roasters around Canada. I know there are some US roasters that also roast Yemeni coffee, but it's always fun to learn about like kind of up and coming origins in the coffee world. Like another one is Yunnan in China is another region that has coffee, and I had no idea coffee was grown in China. Wow. And I had a bag sent to me from another Canadian roaster called Rabbit Hole Roasters, and they also have Yemeni coffees as well. But they sent me a bag of it to like try, and it was almost like this like lemongrass tea, like very interesting. Ooh. Like, and it's funny, like for people who like are not really into coffee, like you probably have like an idea of what coffee tastes like. And I just want to say, like, coffee can taste so different from like different bean to different bean, and it's like so diverse. And it's something that like there's like that classic coffee flavor, like a coffee candy has like that classic old school kind of coffee flavor, but it can be like so much more, and it really depends on kind of the coffees that you buy.
100%. Okay, I'm gonna back us up like a lot right now because
let's do it.
Like I just realized, I was like, all right, okay, we're diving into like coffee nerdy territory, and like maybe we should bring people along for the ride a little bit, because there are a lot of people who don't drink coffee, right? But like I think, okay, so one thing that I wanted to talk to you specifically about is this kind of intersection of coffee and the tech industry, because I think that's where a lot of this kind of stuff starts. At least for me, that's where it started. Like I started getting into coffee because my husband works at a startup where one guy is so into coffee, and so he just brought this whole culture of like making pour overs at work. And so my husband started getting into it. He brought it home, and now I'm really into it. But like, it's just a thing, I think, in the tech industry of like, hey, you want to go grab a cup of coffee? I think part of it is because like the tech industry is centered in San Francisco, and there's a lot of good, like coffee cafe roasters and stuff there too. But like, I don't know if you also know, the iOS community had a coffee meetup, and their URL used to be like coffee.coffee or something like that. I don't know if you ever heard about this, but like,
no,
there's these kind of overlaps, I think, between the tech and coffee world, right? And so I'm kind of curious about like, because I think like there's this, it's a thing. It's just like, hey, let's go do a coffee one-on-one. Let's go to a cafe one-on-one sort of thing. Like, why do you think tech people are so into coffee? I don't know. But like, why is there an overlap?
I mean, I don't know. I think you're right. Like, I definitely think there's like some type of this like unspoken relationship between the tech world and the coffee world. And like, I don't know, when I think of engineers tend to be pretty like detail driven and like tend to be pretty kind of like meticulous in the weeds with like all the details of this and that, and coffee can be that way too if you're like really into the the details of it.
It's like kind of chemistry like. I mean,
Yeah,
okay,
a little bit
like,
scientific.
Yeah, like every person that I've gotten into coffee, because, you know, once you like coffee, you can't help but talk about coffee with everybody.
Yeah. Believe me, I talk about it literally every day on Instagram. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Literally, that's what you do. But it's like there's something about the ritual of like pouring your pour over every morning, or like pulling an espresso shot, even if it's like the work espresso machine, or even if it's a Keurig or whatever. Like there's just a ritual to it, and like there's something about. I mean, I think there's something about caffeine and technology too, because that's definitely a thing of like software engineers drink Red Bulls while they code kind of stuff. But I think that kind of translates into coffee, but less like aggro.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, a little less like organic, a little less natural, but yeah,
totally.
Yeah, I don't know. Like I would be curious to look back in time and see how this all started. I don't know that I have any like aha, insights as to why, but
it's just like, to me, sometimes I'm just like this. It is niche to have this overlap of coffee and tech, but it's so a thing. Like there are so many people. Like when I meet another tech person out in the wild, I do kind of test to see if they like. I don't test as in like, are you a real coffee nerd? But like, I mean, it's just like there's a good chance that they're also kind of into coffee, and so I'm kind of just like, like what kind of coffee? Are you into coffee? Like what kind of coffee are you into? Sort of thing.
Yeah.
Not that there's any right or wrong way to be into coffee, because I don't judge, but like, I mean, I personally just really like light roast pour overs, because I just think it's like like you said, there's so many different flavors, and I think that's one of the most interesting ways to experience it. But yeah, I don't know. It's just fascinating to me that there's like this whole thing.
Yeah, it's funny. I actually kind of do the same thing. Like when I meet someone and they're like, if they mention coffee or if it comes up, like I always ask like, well, how do you brew your coffee? And the answer to that will like always tell me kind of like, are you like into it, or are you like serious about it? Like, are you going to care about the processing method of the beans? Are you going to care about like what mineral supplement are you adding to your water to like get the most tasty, flavorful filtered water? Like,
dude,
like nerdy stuff. Like that's, I want to know. I want to know the details.
Yeah. Okay. Let's do a little bit of role play right now. So like, say that you and we met at some tech event. Maybe I started working at Intuit again or something like that, and then you asked me what kind of coffee I'm into, or if I'm into coffee or something. And I say, I'm just like, okay, I say that, which this is the truth, I'm really into V60s and AeroPresses, and I brew light roasts, and I literally go fetch water from a well. It sounds really intense, but like literally like nearby, there's a place where you can get like water from like an underground water reserve, and it's alkaline water. And I realized that it's so good for brewing coffee. After realizing that the fridge water just won't cut it. Yeah. So that's my answer. Where do you go next? Like, what do you think?
My first response would be, we are like the same person.
Oh, okay.
I mean, like, that's like the level of detail I love to get into. I guess I would ask you, if you had like measured the TDS levels of the water to determine the parts per million of particles, of like minerals to like the water.
Yeah, because it's like magnesium and like all of those play a really big difference, right? I actually haven't done that.
There's different things. It's interesting because like a TDS meter only will tell you like the parts per million of like of dissolved solids in your water, but it won't tell you what they are. So there's something else that like serious coffee nerds, and like I say this being a serious coffee nerd, and I don't have one, so I'm like sad, but they're so expensive. But it's called a refractometer, and like it's used in chemistry, but like people use it in the coffee world, where basically you like there's a little like a port on the top, and you can drip the coffee in this little port, and it shines light through it, and it can actually tell you like what the composition of the water is, or the coffee, and like the percentage of coffee to water, of like how much of an extraction yield did you actually get. And people it's crazy like how technical people can get. I'll send you a profile of someone named Jonathan. He's like an actual chemist who his whole thing is like the actual like intense chemistry of coffee, and it's amazing stuff.
What? That's so cool.
Yeah, he's really, really cool. Has some really like crazy stuff that he does and experiments, but like all these, a lot of the people who are like really, really into this level of meticulousness are like looking for super high extraction yields of like, 24% extracted coffee, 26%, whatever, and based on how you brew it, you'll get like wildly different results. So
Right.
everything from like the grind size to the water temperature to like the actual filter paper used to
Totally.
even just like the pouring techniques, like all these different things go into it. And yeah, it's crazy.
It's wild that like these, like, because when I was first getting into it, I'm like, what's really the difference between a V60 and a Chemex truly? Or like how can it taste so different from regular drip coffee? But it really does, which is what I'm always surprised about, of like how the beans get extracted, what's like how fine the grind is also a really big difference in that. The water temperature, like there's just so many different variables that can yield a completely different cup of coffee. And so it just goes so deep.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, it's crazy, like all the different like you said, variables that go into it. And maybe that's part of it, part of the overlap with tech. They've got some variables in there.
Maybe. Experimentation.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, good. But no, like, yeah, it's crazy how, you can get a coffee and brew it like you brewed the last coffee you got and get like a very different result. Even like the same coffee, depending on like when it was roasted. If it was roasted the day before and you brew it, it might be like, it might taste one way. And it honestly, like a lot of people recommend waiting like a week or two after it's roasted to like get the optimally, kind of the optimal window. But like if you brew it right after it's roasted versus 2 weeks after versus like 2 months after, you get like wildly different results, even if the variables are all the same. Just like that one variable you can't really control, which is like the time off roast. Like even that can make a big difference in how the cup comes out, and you might have to make kind of adaptations to the way that you brew to really get the result that you want. So
totally. I mean, even something as like controllable as like when you first have a hot cup of a pour over and then 30 minutes later when it's cooled down, completely different flavors, like completely different way that it expresses itself. And so like before I used to be like, oh, I'm so sad that I let my coffee like be cold, but it's like it's literally like a different cup of coffee.
Yeah.
Truly.
It's like, oh cool, a new cup, and now it's cold. So it's like iced coffee, right? Like,
exactly.
It's like a brand new cup. Yeah, I find that coffees with like kind of citrusy or like berry flavor notes, when they cool down, it gets like really intense and like almost like tangy, like it's like juice. Like it's so weird how that can like really become very bright and present, where like it might be kind of hidden when it's warmer. And
totally.
Yeah. So,
well, okay. So since I feel like you're kind of on the bleeding edge of coffee technology, new beans, brewing methods and stuff. Like, tell me about like a new, because I always see you like using different gadgets and beans and stuff like that. What's like a recent kind of like thing that you tried that you were like, wow, like this is incredibly exciting?
Yeah, there is one thing that comes to mind. It's actually like not really like a manual brew thing. It's more of an automated thing, but it is like a redemption of a coffee brewing device that I had basically written off as like not good. That has been redeemed in my opinion, and now I'm really excited about. So I'm sure you're, like you mentioned Keurig earlier, I'm sure you're familiar with Nespresso. So there is a company in Singapore, I believe, called Morning. And they have a machine called the Morning Machine, and it's basically a Nespresso pod compatible machine that can brew the coffees from Nespresso pods. But specialty roasters from like all around the world are starting to put their really good coffees in Nespresso pods instead of like kind of like that alone is like really cool. So there's one called April Coffee Roasters from Copenhagen, and they like started doing this where they're putting their coffees in Nespresso pods. And the cool thing with this machine, I wish I could like turn my camera and show you, but just go check out my Instagram for some content on it. But basically the machine is like a space machine. Like you can put the pod in the machine just like any other Nespresso machine, but then there is a dial on the front that you can like twist and change everything from like the pressure profile of like how much pressure it puts on the coffee and how much water you want to run through. Like I want 80 grams of coffee or 40 grams of coffee. You can set like the temperature of the water, like every variable you can actually control on the machine. It has a built-in scale. So like when it starts to pull the coffee through the Nespresso pod, it like will measure it automatically and stop once it's hit like your target yield. It has a TDS meter built in, so you can actually see the like parts per million of the water as as you're brewing the coffee. It's like super cool. And then you can also just use it to run hot water through to do in the machine. They call it like Kyoto drip style coffee for like those little drip bags that you can like tear the top off, and it'll do the whole like brew process for actually like, dripping it just slowly enough so it doesn't overflow that drip bag. And it's like so cool, like really versatile.
Wow.
And it is shocking like how good the coffee is from an espresso pod. Like I never thought I would get good, like what I consider tasty coffee from an espresso pod, but it's shockingly amazing. And like,
wow.
Yeah. So anyway.
Wait. So is it because, so is the Nespresso, like you just buy like an espresso pod from like Target kind of thing? Like if you brew it with that machine, it's good? Or is it these specialty coffee beans that are packed in Nespresso pods that are good? Because I've also written off Nespresso pods a little bit because I'm just like, they're so dark. Yeah. Like I'm not a huge fan of the really, really dark kind of drip coffee kind of stuff. So I've just been like, I need a lot of milk and sugar for that kind of stuff. So like what is it about all of that?
Yeah, I'm going to say the same thing. I would say for drip coffee, even like a drip machine, buying good coffee to begin with is always going to be like your absolute best first step if you want to get better coffee. So if you buy, coffee from the grocery store, oftentimes it's going to be fairly old, fairly off roast, maybe like 4 or 5 months. And you don't really know the quality of the beans. You don't really know like how they were roasted. They could be like roasted to oblivion to where there's like not much coffee left and it's just kind of char that's left. And if you like the taste of that, that's fine. Like, drink coffee the way that you like to drink coffee. Of course I don't judge and that's not, for me to decide, what's best for you to drink. But the coffees that I like to drink are also kind of light roasts, like you mentioned. And I think honestly, the big thing is that, specialty roasters are putting really like tasty, good coffees that they have like roasted to perfection. And the ability of the machine to kind of dial in the settings to put the right amount of pressure at the right temperature and extract the right amount is something that's cool to be able to kind of play with and optimize what you get out. Because like a standard Nespresso machine, as far as I'm aware, you just like put the pod in and push go and it just does what it does. But with this, you get a lot more precision and a lot more like ability to kind of dial in the coffee and get exactly the result you want. And that's one thing that I really like. I think it's a mix of both really good coffee and like really great tech to be able to extract it well.
That's so cool. I'm totally going to check it out after this.
Yeah, it's pretty sweet.
Wow, that is so cool. Well, I think we're basically at time, actually. Thanks so much for being on the show. Where can people find you, I guess, on the internet?
Yes, on the internet. Good question. My handle on Instagram is @GuruCaleb. That's a nod back to my teaching days in Indonesia. Guru is the word for teacher in Indonesian, so that's where that came from. Anyway, but @GuruCaleb. On Instagram, and that's honestly pretty much the only place I am these days. I decided to simplify and just be on Instagram only. So
definitely go check out his stuff. Literally, the espresso pulls that he films are like butter, like literally so beautiful. Things of beauty. I kid you not.
Liquid gold.
Liquid gold, exactly. You can listen to this episode of Muko's Corner through your favorite podcasting app.